Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's Dominic, also known as TikTok. Thanks again. The last video we reviewed a RB production that I produced completely on the M1 iPad Pro. It was a track with some acoustic guitar, and we ran through that track and talked about the instruments that I used and how I processed the guitar and all the different instruments and mixed the beat. What I didn't tell you was how I processed the master bus. So we're going to go through that today. We're going to look at the two plugins that I keep on my master bus for every production that I do in Beatmaker 3. So this first plugin is Equalizer. So it's Toneboosters Equalizer. This is what it looks like. If you expand it out, you get these options. So let's just play the track and you'll see what's happening here, and then I'll walk through and explain what's going on. This is off. This is on. Off. All right, so some things going on here. You see some movement, some animations going on. You may be wondering, well, why is the EQ doing that? Well, the Toneboosters EQ is actually a dynamic EQ as well. Most people may not know that because the feature's kind of hidden. So unless you're digging into the menu, it may not be easy for you to notice that it is a dynamic EQ, meaning that you can take a band of EQ and actually apply compression in dynamics control just to that band of EQ. So let's see how we can do that. So first off, when you open up, let's just open up a new instance of the EQ. So here's the Toneboosters plugins. Here's the Equalizer. All right, so by default, you're probably going to get this. Now, they kind of make it easy for you to get started. There's several different presets that you can select here. There's a spectrum analyzer, which is super helpful and super useful for finding and locating those frequencies that really need some work. There's also some EQ templates here. Here is one for dynamic template. So this is actually how I discovered that the Toneboosters EQ was a dynamic plugin. Here's a de-essing one, band limit template. So all sorts of different templates, even one for mastering, some hum removal tools. So very useful, very handy utility to use. Here's a nifty little side feature. You can change the actual GUI color if you don't like it. But I like the dark version, so that's what I roll with. Anyhow, there's an A/B selection here. You can also revert. So there's an undo built into the plugin itself. You can save your own presets. Here's your menu structure for if you want to save and load your own presets or programs is what they call it. You can also export those. I'm not exactly sure what that's for, but again, some manual digging will probably tell you what that's for. At the bottom of the EQ, you have an AI assist, which I've used before. It kind of helps you figure out where you want to go in terms of tonality, and it kind of helps analyze your music and suggest a curve for you to use there. So that's a pretty handy feature there. Again, they have a built-in analyzer, and you can view in different degrees, so octaves, linear, and what have you. So that's really, really handy for being able to figure out those problem frequencies or those frequencies that may need some help to help you EQ, which is really tough, and sometimes you need more than your ears. So here's your output monitor, your input monitor, or you can sidechain this and monitor your sidechain. So that's pretty handy. You can add latency or enable or disable latency there. Here's a high quality mode. So I make sure I'm running in the high quality mode to get the most out of it. And then I'm guessing this may be a mix. So you can dial in how much of the EQ is actually affecting the output of that audio. I'm not sure, but again, some manual digging will get you the answer to that. You can monitor your outputs or your in and outs on a VU. So a lot of helpful features built here into the plugin itself. So let's look at let's go back to our simple. All right, so here's some nodes, some EQ nodes. And just like any EQ, you can drag the nodes and do your cut or boost that way. Here are some handles for you to adjust the Q. Here's another node. Now, if you want to add a new node, you simply double tap, or I'm double clicking with my trackball here, and you can keep adding new nodes here. So you can add as many as you need here. Also, when you touch a node, it's going to give you this little pop-up, and you can move this guy around. You can pin it so it's always there. And then you can choose the type of curvature you want, or the type of shelving that you may want for that particular node. So it's tons of different options here for you to really dial in or get the type of EQ that you want. So it's super flexible in that regard. You can probably emulate any EQ that's ever been known to man with this EQ and save that as a preset or a program and be able to use that anytime you want. Here's a solo option for it. If you want to eliminate the node, you just simply hit that X and it's gone. So we'll remove some of these nodes. You can link these to a mid or side chain, so that's very handy and helpful if you're into that sort of thing. Here's your gain if you want to actually just dial in the gain using the GUI here. Here's your Q if you want to change the Q setting or the width of the band there. And then here's your frequency setting, so if you want to change the frequency of that node. Now, getting into the dynamic aspect of it, you want to click this guy here. This is going to expand. And for the dynamic section, you have different things like circuit drive, which will give you some saturation for that particular node. Here's your ratio. So by default, you may not see that it's being dynamic because the ratio by default is going to be 1:1. Sorry for the loudness there. But once you start increasing that ratio, you're going to see that it starts reacting in a dynamic way. So here's your threshold, so you can tell it exactly how much of that band you want to be compressed. And then there's attack and release settings, just as any standard compressor would have. You can also choose auto, so that it automatically detects that and chooses the best attack and release settings. And then you have some other options here, which are helpful. And then this kind of, I guess, an expander of some sort to kind of give you some headroom in terms of the dynamics. So this is how you would use the Toneboosters EQ in a dynamic way. Very helpful for doing some kind of pre-mastering or some quick mastering type of things, or full mastering if you want, to be honest, so that you can band limit your whole mix so that no particular band is peaking out, and you can balance each band before you actually go to a master limiter. So speaking of that, let's talk about the Toneboosters Barricade. So I like using Toneboosters Barricade both as a standard compressor and as a limiter and a bus compressor. It's they make some great tools that are really easy to use and very powerful. So here is Barricade, and you'll see it has a compressor section as well as a limiter section. So in the compressor section, you can choose typical things like your attack release. You have your ratio there. So for when I'm doing bus compression, I may choose a ratio between 2 and 4, and an attack between 10 and 30, maybe 20 and 30. It depends on what it is and how much how much glue I want to get out of that bus compression. There's also an auto release, or you can set your release how you want, if you want a quicker or a slower release there. And then there's makeup gain as well. It can do auto makeup gain. So as much as you're limiting or compressing the signal is as much as it will make up that gain back, right? You also have some different modeling going on in Barricade. I haven't really experimented with this, but just the fact that they have some bass saturation, mild saturation type of modeling, as well as analog tape modeling and mixed console type modeling is really nice to know, because sometimes we look to have those kind of tonal differences when we choose a compressor. You know, it's not just about compressing, it's also about getting a certain tone out of it, certain saturation tone, warmth, and that sort of thing, smoothing out the high end or rounding off the low end, those sorts of things. So Toneboosters Barricade gives you a lot of those options for being able to shape your sound just with the type of modeling in the compressor. So I need to experiment more with that, to be honest, to kind of hear those tonal variances. I couldn't tell you right now, but it's nice to know that it's built into there. Here is the limiter section, and it's going to give you kind of the same things the compressor gives you, attack release settings, as well as a threshold and a gain. So here is going to be your threshold for that. On the compressor side, just to kind of backtrack a little bit, here's your compressor threshold, so you can adjust the amount of or adjust when the compressor is actually taking effect. Same thing with the limiter. You're adjusting the level, the dynamic level in which the compressor starts working. What I really like about the Toneboosters Barricade is that it also gives you some metering options. So you have this nice graphic of your waveform of your track, so you can see where the transients are, where they're being compressed, where they're being limited. There's also some average metering, so you can kind of see your RMS levels there, as well as some loudness metering options here, which is very handy for making sure that you're getting optimal levels that are broadcast standards across the board and will match with commercial level or mastering levels, basically. So to have all of those tools inside of this plugin is very handy to be able to see that, you know, I have a loudness level of -12 or -13, you know, is really helpful for me. And they have put that all into this plugin. You can reset it here. You can turn it off if you want so that it's not taking up too much of your CPU. Reset, not sure what this does, but again, read the manual. And you get the little color options as well that you had in the other Tonebooster plugins. So I really like Tonebooster plugins. This is the Barricade as well as the EQ. I really love using these on my master bus as well as throughout my productions and mixes on iPad. Really helps me glue everything together, get my levels to where they need to be, EQ and balance everything. And also the fact that the EQ is a dynamic EQ really helps me out in terms of balancing the mix. So that's Toneboosters Barricade. Hey, this is another video. If you like this type of content, make sure you like and subscribe, so it encourages me to give you more content like this that's going to be helpful for you in your production. So with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.